But I also think in terms of how we relate to each other with the rise of AI, we're living in this kind of trust desert. And I don't think it's ever been more important for us to be able to look each other in the whites of our eyes and have real conversation. I don't think the days will ever return when, for example, I talk all about growing a business. That's my niche that I coach around. And I don't think we're ever going to go back to a place where we can rely on just, putting out clever worded content and expecting things to happen. It's all about relationships now.
That's a conversation that we don't have, because we will, people will flippantly say, well, it's not a matter of life and death. And yet what we know is it's all coming to that. It is
Right.
all coming to a matter of life and death and how we live our lives and we move through the process of death. And we have been gifted with the experience that we came away with the conclusion of, we got to witness a beautiful death.
And I really believe this comes back to what you said earlier about so often the default is a panic, it's a frantic, it's a catastrophizing of what's happening, which is just so unhelpful to the person living the experience, whereas a calm gentleness and acceptance, and as I said earlier, that allowing time to slow down, gosh, what a different experience we were able to share.
Sometimes you meet somebody and you just have an instant connection with them. And my guest today is that kind of person. She came into my life like a long lost friend, and we have had so many amazing conversations. And there's a very special conversation that we're going to share with you today. So it's my dear friend, Gill Moakes, and Gill is a business mentor, writer, and a podcast host. I love her podcast. It's called Rewild Your Business, and she helps women build meaningful, profitable businesses doing the work that their soul intended. Sound familiar? So now you know one of the reasons that I love her so much already. So Gill guides women to remember who they are, reclaim their voice, and rise in the work that they're here to do without compromise. Her work weaves together strategic clarity, spiritual depth, and radical authenticity. I cannot tell you how excited I am to share this wonderful woman with you, this amazing conversation with you. So as they say in the entertainment industry, welcome to the stage, Gill Moakes. Wow, and the crowd goes, wow.
I'm channeling my inner American for this now then, Roz. Woo! Hey.
Cool. Yeah, because that's the other thing. We are on opposite sides of the pond. And yet again, that's the beauty of, as the kids call it, the internets, that, we connect with people in a way that we wouldn't have been able to before. And for you and I, it has been just an immediate soul connection. And so I'm thrilled to share your voice, your wisdom, your joy, and your beautiful soul with my audience.
Oh, Roz, thank you so much. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. From the very first time, the first conversation we ever had, we just found so much we had in common. And it wasn't even just that, was it? It was kind of just our approach to life felt so similar, felt so aligned. I felt like I'd known you forever. So yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so am I. And it's funny, I was just listening to one of your podcasts and you were talking about, relationships over algorithms, and that really is what this whole thing is all about. Like, we can build a business, but we have to build a life, and we have to build connections. And now more than ever, we have an opportunity to make a difference in the world by the way that we show up in the world. So speak to that just a little bit.
Mm, mm. I think now more than ever before, it's so important for us. I talk a lot about bringing all of who we are to our work, but really it's bringing all of who we are to our life. Um, and I think we are living in a world of challenge when clearly we're living in a world of challenge in the wider political landscape, every landscape, there's challenge. But I also think in terms of how we relate to each other with the rise of AI, we're living in this kind of trust desert. And I don't think it's ever been more important for us to be able to look each other in the whites of our eyes and have real conversation. I don't think the days will ever return when, for example, I talk a lot about growing a business. That's my niche that I coach around. And I don't think we're ever going to go back to a place where we can rely on just, putting out clever worded content and expecting things to happen. It's all about relationships now. And I think in that episode of the podcast that you just mentioned, I think I mentioned you actually in that, because I recorded that episode just after we had just reconnected and we hadn't spoken for a while. And so it was really top of my mind. And it's such a great interaction is such a great example, isn't it,
Yeah.
of what really matters when you talk about clients, collaborators, introducers of business, all of the ways that we can grow businesses, like I say, which is my area of expertise. Nothing is more important than relationships.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we have one.
So am I. And that is leading me to the beautiful conversation that we're getting ready to have, because when we reconnected, I had recently served my mother on hospice as she was making her transition.
Yeah.
And we were having a conversation, and you were being, your wonderful, beautiful, supportive self. And you said something about, because I didn't know that you had walked your husband through hospice.
Right.
And you
Absolutely.
said he had a beautiful death. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, I'm working on a talk about that same thing. And I think that's a conversation that we don't have, because we will, people will flippantly say, well, it's not a matter of life and death. And yet what we know is it's all coming to that. It is
Right.
all coming to a matter of life and death, and how we live our lives and we move through the process of death. And we have been gifted with the experience that we came away with the conclusion of, we got to witness a beautiful death. So tell me about, your journey, your experience, and how you were supporting your husband in his journey and transition.
Yeah. As you've said that again, of how that conversation came about between the two of us, I just got the full on goosebumps again, as you said it, because it really was quite amazing, wasn't it? That I
Yeah.
chose those words and it was the exact words of what you've been working on. And so that was amazing, really. Although kind of didn't surprise me, because we have that kind of connection between us, don't we, where things like that happen. Yeah, so I lost my husband, Phil, in 2016, and he passed away from bladder cancer. And he was only 42, so really young, to pass away at that time. And I mean, nothing will ever soften that blow of receiving a terminal diagnosis, when someone's that young. And like most couples, we had this entire future mapped out ahead of us of all of the things that we were going to do and places we wanted to go, and the rug just gets pulled out from under you. And you kind of spend a bit of time thinking, wow, I don't really know how do we move forward from this? You're almost frozen for a moment. And then you realize that you have choices around the decisions you make from there on out. And the thing that was the most important for me was that Phil got to make his choices around what he wanted for the end chapter of his life.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful things, one of the most beautiful conversations we had when he was ill, actually, was when I said to him, well, is there anything you want to achieve? Is there anything that you want to do? What can we, what we started talking bucket list things, and that your mind goes to there. I remember so clearly saying that to Phil, and Phil turning to me and saying, you know what, I love my life the way it is. I'd like more of it, but I love it the way it is. He didn't have any of those big bucket list things that he wanted to achieve. And I remember thinking, my goodness, what a thing to be able to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that made me really, in a way, that made me really happy that he was at that stage. That was how he was feeling. That was his truth. One of the things that was really important to Phil. So Phil was bipolar, and so he had some challenges around. One of the things that was very challenging for Phil was going into hospital. He was allergic to hospital. Any kind of institutional type of environment made him incredibly uncomfortable, and he really hated it. And really, it wasn't even a spoken thing. We just kind of both knew that I would take care of him at home. He didn't ask me. I didn't offer. It was just something we knew about each other. He knew I would do it. I knew it was what he would want. And we were very fortunate. The hospice at home, which is, I think you have something similar in the States.
Yes.
And they were absolutely amazing. I mean, gosh, over here, we bash the NHS something chronic, but they really came up trumps for us. They got us the bed that we had in the lounge, and I cared for Phil at home, which was incredibly challenging at some points.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting too, like you're talking about the whole idea of having a choice. And I think a lot of people miss that because there is this frantic energy that some people bring to the process of death. And
Oh my God, I so agree.
yeah, and we know it's not for everybody. So we know that that's not for everybody. And yet, if we can get clear on, okay, I can do this part and yet I can't do that part. You know what I'm saying? It makes the transition easier, because in my situation, my mother was 90 years old, and she was in a setting first where the goal was to get her rehabilitated and get her back on her feet and whatever. And then it came that we realized that it wasn't to be. And so where she was was no longer the right place for her to be, because they weren't capable of, supporting her in the dying process.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's just that so many times we want to fix stuff instead of being present with what is. So like you made the decision that I know that Phil wants to be home, and so I'm going to support him. And I think one of the beautiful things that I just want to highlight here is that when he told you, like, I love my life and my life is good, that speaks volumes to also the relationship that you both had, that his contentment was with you. And there's something about home, what home represents, not the building, the experience of when we are going home or we're making that final journey home, that the sense of home that we can create for those that we love, that's an amazing gift.
Oh my goodness. I think you are so right. And it wasn't that we were in our home with a small h. We were home with a capital H, if that helps for listeners to kind of make that that differentiation. And I think you're absolutely right. That was the feeling that we had. I also want to just pick up on something else you just said about that frantic energy that some people go to when, because of the fear around death and fear of the unknown and the panic that sets in with a terminal diagnosis and the end of life stages. There is a panic that sets in. I really believe now, though, that that doesn't have to be the way it is. And it wasn't for us. If anything, I feel like time slowed a little for us. I
Yes.
really do. I think time slowed a little for us. I didn't prioritize anything that I didn't need to prioritize. Now, I'm going to just acknowledge for a moment, I was very privileged in that my work allowed me to take some time out and not have to worry too much about money. And my goodness, what a privileged position to be in, to be able
Yes.
to just have that time with Phil at the end. And I understand how lucky I was to have that. I really do, and I really appreciate it. I also think that there are a couple of other things I did that made it possible for the end to be as calm and as non-panicked, non-frantic as we had it. And one of the things was that I didn't turn down offers of help. So
Mm.
I prioritized Phil over everything. I did not clean my house. I did not cook a meal. Every single family and member and friend who said, is there anything I could do? I said, yes, absolutely. If you could cook on the Tuesday,
I love
if
that.
you can come and stay perhaps for 5 days and clean my house while you're here, wonderful. Because it was a really good exercise in accepting help, because suddenly nothing was more important for me than being with Phil and taking care of him. So there was no kind of, and for a Brit, this is hard. There was no politeness of holding back, of not, accepting the offers. My brother and my sister-in-law were amazing. They came and stayed with me, I think, for a couple of weeks and
Oh.
cooked every night. And, we had like I said, we had the bed in the lounge and it was nearly Christmas time. So we had the Christmas tree up and the twinkly lights. And we had the bed in the lounge and I was on the sofa next to Phil. And, my brother and sister-in-law came and they cooked for us every day for about 2 weeks. And every evening but they never came and sat in the lounge, not once, because that was
Mm.
our time and space together. They sat up on my bed upstairs watching TV every evening and just gave us our space. And I think, my goodness, when people can just do that, can just show up for you and give you exactly what you need in that moment. Oh, so grateful for that. I really was,
Yeah,
So,
that is a beautiful thing, and you're right.
mm,
Part of it, I'm sure, is British culture, and then the other thing, I think, because we are kind of alpha females, that we're coaches and we're fixers and we're whatever. Like being
yeah.
able to be open to that level of support is
Mm,
so important. And like you're
mm,
saying, the people who do this, like the people in hospice, because we were super blessed that like the hospice company that supported me in this journey. And I'm in a new state, so I didn't have a lot of family or anything like that around.
mm, mm.
And so they came in, like you said, gangbusters. Like the day that we made the decision that she was going on hospice, they just came in like a whirlwind, move stuff out, move stuff
Right.
in, and it was all there. And then again, like you're saying, like when they asked, well, do you need more this? Do you need more that? There were different therapies, music therapy. They had a massage therapist come in, all of the things. And so giving ourselves permission to say yes, or to say, I need some help, and understand that that does not end when that person transitions.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a really, really good point. Yes. Yep, yep, yep.
Because then we
Yeah, I
figure
think
out, go ahead.
no, you go.
No, I was going to say, then we're dealing with, okay, I mean, the practical things of the funeral and the estate or the EIEIO, and yet it's
Mm.
also the other thing of, okay, I've been in this mode for the period that I was, and now that part is gone. So what do I do with who I am and what I'm experiencing right now?
Absolutely. And I'd had this time, this really beautiful time, and it was beautiful. And I'm happy to sort of touch on the end. And it really was a beautiful death, which
Yeah.
we talked about. There was no panic. It was incredibly peaceful. It was yeah, just a very calm, peaceful, beautiful experience. Um Actually, I'll share with you something. After Phil passed, it was just me and him in the house together, and he passed, and I didn't do anything straight away. In fact, I sat with him for a few hours before I then decided to make. When I felt ready, I made the call to the hospice people, who then again went into action and they took care of all the things. It was so amazing. But I think again, that overriding feeling of there is no rush for anything here, that I'm allowed to experience this in the
Yeah.
way that feels right for me now, feels
Yes.
past now, and I can now take each thing one at a time that I now need to do to be okay. And I can do it in my own time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
your point about continuing to, get that help and support afterwards, I think that's just so important. We don't have to, um, the support doesn't have to end when the person has passed.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. And it's so interesting that you share that. I swear we are like soulmates in so many ways, because I had the same experience and I got pushback for it because I was like, I don't want to do anything right now, you
Mhm.
know? And I'm going to take, and I took 48 hours
Mhm.
to just process. I mean, she wasn't here the whole 48 hours.
Sure.
I took 48 hours just to say, okay, before we're going to roll into what comes next, because she passed on a Saturday morning. And I did not share that until that Monday. And I just took that weekend to be still and to be quiet and to be calm. And like you're saying, like once the hospice team came in and bathed her and dressed her, and then the funeral home came to get her, and I sat there with her through that whole process, and it was just so amazing because in so many ways it just looked like what we had been doing, because she had a beautiful, peaceful transition. And so there was no angst in her body, there was no
Mhm.
angst in the energy in the house. I felt the
Mm.
wave of this plane and the other still happening. And I
Mm.
took that time just to be present with, okay, this is where I am, and this is what I need to process right now. And like you said, there's no right or wrong, there's no timeline. And there was nothing, no one was here anyway. So there was nothing that needed to be done in that moment. And yet, some people were like, why didn't you call me right away? And I was just like, because I couldn't and I didn't need to. I did what
No,
needed to
you
be
didn't
done.
need to. Absolutely. And it was your experience to be lived.
Right.
Those very precious hours around the end, and that weekend for you, that was your experience to be lived.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and no one gets to tell us what that needs to look like.
100%.
Mm.
And like you're saying, for my mom in her transition, because at first when she first went on hospice, it was like, oh, it's a matter of hours, days, whatever. And then it was like 5 more weeks.
Yeah.
And, it was, and I believe that part of it was because she felt that sense of home because we were home for each other. You know what I
Mm.
mean? We were home
Yeah.
with the recipes that we shared and the dishes that we like to eat off of, and the way that we could make each other laugh, all of those things. And I think that's the other thing people miss is like, you're not, at least it wasn't for me. I was not sitting next to a bedside crying.
Right.
We had
Me neither.
beautiful moments, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And then watching as she had more of a realization, and part of the thing for her is like people kept saying she was experiencing delirium. And then what I understand is she was traversing between two worlds. And when I was
Mm.
able to have that conversation with her, it eased things for her because she said, like, I feel like I'm in two places at once. And I was like, that's because you are. And so
Yeah.
when she was good with that and understood that, her experience changed around it. And it wasn't that she was afraid, she was like unsure or confused at first, like, what is this like? And when I was able to help put language around it, she was like, thank you. You understand. And I think that's the other thing that we miss sometimes. Is like, dying is still your life. Like, you get to choose. Nobody gets to tell you who you are or how you die.
No.
Like, or you need to do this, or I get to do this, or you should be. No, her 90 years, like, she earned her transition on her terms.
Right. Absolutely. And we all do. We all do. It's funny you say that because that's just taken me back to one of the things that at the beginning, like, after Phil had the terminal diagnosis, and it was just after the hospice at home, people came to start supporting us and they bought the bed and everything. Not long after that, he went onto the syringe driver, to put the morphine in through a syringe driver, so it's administered automatically. And I remember, every time they came, he would tell them that he needed it increased. So, why wouldn't you, I guess? But I remember at the time almost wanting to say, oh, no, please don't, because you might need it further down the line increased. Try and cope. And of course, I had this sudden realization that this is not my experience. I don't get to have that input. But that little control freak in me wanted to be like, no, Phil, don't ask for it all now. You might need it later. Like, don't put your coat on now. You might need it when you go out. Yeah. Um, but you're right. And I think that realization really served me well, because after that, that realization made me come back to, this is absolutely his experience. Every
Yes.
single part of it is his experience.
Yes.
My grief, my losing him, that's my experience. And they're not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And even in the beauty and the intimacy of caring for someone, whatever that process is, and in turning them or bathing them or whatever that is, like, the level of trust that somebody is giving over to their caregiver at that time, that is
Mm,
such a precious gift and a precious honor that we get, rather than we're imposing our will on somebody, or we feel burdened by it. And I'm not saying that it's easy. I mean, it's work for sure.
sure. Yeah.
And yet how we frame it, and having that ability to share that experience. And for my mom, she eased into it. And she could have been British, because she was just this very pulled and poised and elegant woman.
Mm,
And yet she allowed herself to be cared for in such
mm,
a beautiful and gracious way.
mm,
And for me, that was just, there was again such a beauty to that, because it wasn't like, all right, you need to do this now, or all right, well, you need to eat, or whatever. It was like, what do you need right now? And how can I serve and support you? And that give and take between the two. Oh my gosh.
that gentleness, just as you said, that gentleness. And I really believe this comes back to what you said earlier about so often the default is a panic, it's a frantic, it's um, a, a catastrophizing
Yes.
of what's happening, which is just so unhelpful to the person living the experience. Whereas a calm gentleness and acceptance, and as I said earlier, that allowing time to slow down, gosh, what a different experience we were able to share by
Yes.
having that approach. Mm.
Yes. And that sense of timelessness, because when
Mm.
we think of or talk about the other side, there's no boundaries and there's no time and there's no
Right.
rigidity in
Yep.
that process. And so if we allow ourselves to tune into that, like that starts happening before they make their transition. And I think that
Mm.
that's what that in and out of the two worlds is. People talk about people seeing loved ones prior to people making that transition, whether it be a pet, a parent, whoever has passed on. And so those two worlds begin, because I call it the thinning of the veil, these two worlds
Yeah.
begin to converge. And to be able to bear witness to that and not rail against it or not be told you are experiencing delirium or it's the onset of, not Alzheimer's, with the other one, I can't think of it right now,
Or
but
the dementia.
dementia. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, actually, there is a heightened awareness and presence that is
Mm.
possible because now
Mm.
you are present with everything that is possible.
Mm. Absolutely. Can I ask you a question, Roz?
Of course.
This just came up for me, but one thing that I was very mindful of was not feel any fear. It was so important to me that he didn't know I was frightened about
Mm.
him going. Can you relate to that? I don't know if that strikes a chord with you.
So, yes, and yet what was so interesting is, in this process, like, my mother still wanted to, not even wanted to, she was capable of mothering me through this process.
Yeah.
And so when she first got here, there was a point and she said to me, "What's wrong with me?" And I said, "Mom, your heart is winding down, your heart is failing." And she said, "Mm." And then in that moment, just the and then she said, "It makes you sad, doesn't it?" And so she was present with me as her daughter and
Yeah.
what my experience was. So she created space for me to just be fully present with everything that I was experiencing. So I didn't have to hold anything back from her.
That
And I
is
was
so
able to,
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because she was still
Oh, and
mothering me.
I was just gonna say, she was your mother right up until the end, wasn't she? She was still her priority
Yeah,
was still to protect you and
yeah,
to shelter you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Mm.
because of that, she created a space that I could just be fully present with my sadness and all of the things. And it's interesting because it wasn't, I understand you're saying, like, there wasn't, I didn't have fear. I mean, like,
Mm.
my wish would have been like, wow, I wish you could stay longer. Like, that's really what I
Yes.
wish. And yet the and this is interesting because I don't fully have language around this. So I'll be interested to see how you see it. There, she had an acceptance of what was happening, but there was never a resignation. She lived every day until the last day. On the days she felt like eating, she asked for food and I'd fix whatever she wanted or whatever. And then when the days she didn't have the strength to do anything, she was just calm and still. And yet every day she was present
Mm.
with life. So it wasn't like she gave up or she was
Mm.
resigned to it. There was an acceptance, but she wasn't resigned to it. Does that resonate with you at all?
It really does, actually. It really does. Phil really accepted the diagnosis right from the beginning. And he was never angry. I
Mm,
was angry. I was really angry. I was the one that was like, this is just so freaking unfair. And why is this happening to us? And I was the one that was in that place in the beginning. And Phil never was. He wasn't angry. He accepted it. I'm trying to think whether was he resigned? Hmm. That's actually a tricky one because I think he just accepted the path of what was going to happen, and
yeah.
he didn't fight it. I don't think. So maybe there was an element of resignation. But for me, that was in part because he wanted that calm, controlled experience of the end and he wanted to have that at home. And that for Phil, that was his priority above everything, was not having to go into hospital and be cared for in there by people he didn't know.
Yes.
And I think so that the acceptance and maybe a little resignation was around, okay, I accept this is happening. I'm going to have this my way though. And I want that to be calm. I want it to be at home. I want us to be on our own together. And yeah, so I do, and I can, so from what you've told me about your mum, I can so picture that almost.
Yeah.
I can picture that kind of still living life. Like you say, when she felt like eating, she would have her favorite foods. And, I really can. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
I do remember one evening of Phil being at home and telling me that he quite fancied a White Russian. So, cocktail shaker. That's what we'll do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And
Absolutely.
that's what I mean. It's like not like, oh, you can't have this or you shouldn't have this. It's like, girl, like,
You have whatever you like.
right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 And just again, that sense of um peace, like you said, that
Mm,
ease and that peace,
mm.
because it was the same thing with my mom, because her last wish, which she was not able to have, she wanted to go home to her home in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't possible. So first she wanted me to come get her from where she was, and she just wanted, to be with me. And then she was like, but I want to see my home. I want to see my house one more time. And so and she was like, and things were crazy here. And she was like, but I don't want to fly because there's too much stuff going on with that. And I was like, no problem. We'll take the train. And I love trains. So I bought the tickets and
Oh,
whatever.
I
And
do.
yet when she got here, she just couldn't make the trip. And
Mm,
so again, like I said, that sense of home becomes, how do we share our experience together? How do we share what is common to us, what feels safe and secure? And just like you're saying, she did not want to be in a hospital. She did not want to be in a skilled nursing center. She wanted to be in what felt like home. So since it
mm.
couldn't be her actual home, we created that space. And she had been here before anyway. And it's a beautiful room with almost the same color as her room at home. And so we just did all of the things. And it was like, her favorite dishes,
Yeah.
and not only dishes, the plates and the dishes to eat. And so creating that experience of, you know, of home, because
Mm,
I think that our souls, like you were saying, even between you and I, it feels like we've always known each other.
mhm,
There is a sense of home for me between us because we have
mm.
the same language and the same
Yeah, we
values,
do.
and
Mm.
so it's just like, "Oh, that's my girl," and so we'll just have this conversation, and then, like you said something, and then we both got goosebumps.
Really did.
And I think
Yeah,
I believe that that is what creates relationship and home, and that we don't have to create something, like, we don't have to here's a better word, we don't have to manufacture
that's a
relationship.
great word.
Yeah,
That's
we
a
don't have to
great word.
manufacture that. We can
No,
experience it.
I think that's a really, really good point, and I also think that for 2 people to have this conversation, right? This is a deep conversation. It's an incredibly personal conversation, isn't it?
Yes.
Um, but for us, it's not difficult and it's not jarring. I don't feel like I have to be performing a certain way to be acceptable in this conversation. I feel I can just tell the whole of my truth. I don't feel I have to guard anything. And I think that's a precious kind of relationship that we have. Mm,
Yes,
mm,
100%. And I think that it's so important for people to be able to listen in on this conversation, because there's
yeah,
somebody who's facing this right now. There's somebody who's
absolutely.
facing their partner with a terminal diagnosis, and there's a child who is dealing with their parent transitioning.
Mhm,
And there's not many places that you can hear this conversation or have this conversation. And so if we can support and touch one person
mm.
just by us sharing our experience, I just think it's so valuable and so important.
I completely agree with you, and I feel like, gosh, if we can diffuse the fear for just one person, the fear of what happens at the end, if we can diffuse the fear around that for one person, that is everything to me. I think I would have really appreciated being able to hear a conversation like this when I was going through losing Phil. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
powerful
yeah.
conversation to have, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And what I do want to call out, because one of the things that I had done, and I wasn't in this situation. There was just a creator. She's on TikTok,
Mm,
and her name is Hospice Nurse Julie.
mm,
And her mission is to normalize death. And so she
mm,
shares her experiences in a very beautiful way, like honoring her patient's privacy and whatever. And yet she shares what to expect and why not to be afraid. And she's answering questions, and she even shares what she doesn't know, because I think that's the other thing. We don't have to have all the answers. We just have to share what we already know. And so because I had followed her long before my mother was, because my mother was always physically fit and all of that. So I didn't need it. I just found her work fascinating, that when the time came, I was like, oh, I remember her talking about this. Oh, I get this part. And so even making the call saying, okay, I need to get hospice in here. How do I do that? It was because I heard a creator who shared. So I think that that is the work, that when we talk about, this, our work as coaches or content creators or
mhm,
influencers, whatever language we want to put around it.
mhm.
Let's have conversations that matter. Let's talk about things that make a difference, because it is all life and death at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and oh my goodness, if we can just contribute to that, if more of us contribute to with that attitude, the whole creator economy, the whole online world would be such a powerful place for good.
Yeah.
Mm.
100%, 100%. And that's, coming full circle again, that's why I'm so grateful that we connected first and foremost. And like in a whole other conversation, like our first conversation was around, we both have adult sons with special needs. And it's like, we
Right.
didn't know that at first. And then the next, other conversations. And then, I shared that I had gone through the hospice journey and didn't know that you had supported, Phil in that process. And so just having conversations that matter. I love, what's his name? Seth Godin always says, do work that matters for people who care. And
Yes.
so we don't have to always be like, well, let's do this and we got to do that. And how are we going to work together? And what are we going to sell? That will come, I believe, organically because of the connections that we make with people on a very real level.
Amen to that. I mean, oh my goodness. Absolutely right. There's so much, I think, that is contrived online, and so much is talked about relationship building, relationship marketing, and I talk about it a lot. But it doesn't work if it's contrived. It has to be natural. It has to be how you would really have a conversation with someone in any context in life. It's about finding things you have in common, sharing experiences, laughing at the same things. It's finding the things that you have shared beliefs around and values around. And that's, I think, why we have this, we don't talk every day, but we have this strong relationship because of those shared values and beliefs that we took the time to find out about each other.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
real relationship building.
100%.
Mm.
And then, I just want to thank you for being willing to have this conversation on camera with me so that we can put this out in the world and let it do what it's supposed to do. As Ray Charles says, we're going to let it do what it do. So
I'm not even going to attempt to say that in my Mary Poppins British accent, but yeah.
Exactly. But there's a time and a space for all of that, because my daughter, when she was little, she went through her Mary Poppins period. And so I became mother. And one day she was like, Mother, I'm not talking to everyone. And I was just like, oh,
Love it.
okay, little girl. So, here we go.
That's
Oh, so
Ross,
before we
thank
leave,
you.
oh,
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity as well to come and talk about this.
yeah,
Because it's really important to me to talk about it and frame it like this, that it can be a beautiful experience and it doesn't have to be something to terrify us.
yes.
Mm.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So we're just going to trust that this is going to get before the right people who need to hear it. And just, throughout time, we never know who's going to click on this. It may be 10 years from now, and the person's going to be like,
Right.
oh my God, I needed to hear this. I needed to know that this matters. Because like I said, with my mother, when she was having experience and people were trying to, make it a clinical determination. And like we had a couple of conversations, and she was just like, oh, thank you. You understand. Like, and that's at the end of the day, we all just want to be heard and seen and understood. And while again, I didn't have all the answers, at least because I had studied hospice nurse Julie, and I've done the work on myself in my spiritual practices and whatever, there was language that I could put around it to support her. And the things that I didn't know, I could listen, I could just be present
Yeah.
and give her the space to show up in this world on her way to the next, in whatever way felt right and safe for her.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. What a
Yeah.
privilege that we got to do that too, I think.
Oh my gosh, that part.
I feel that. I feel like I was so privileged to have that experience with Phil,
Yeah, I
you know?
agree. It has been the greatest honor of my life.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, it really is, and I mean, I would
Yeah.
have never thought it, you know, and yet again, it has been just an amazing experience, and I'm grateful, and she was always such a strong woman anyway, so there was only so much you were gonna tell her anyway,
Mm.
but
Mm.
giving her the space to have that experience and the honor that she allowed me to share those moments with her and bear witness, because that's really what it is. We're bearing witness to somebody else's
Yes.
next iteration. They're becoming. It for me, it's not the end. It was her becoming in going to the next place, whatever that was.
That's right.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Miss Jill, tell the people where and how they can find you, because I know a lot of people are going to want to with you after this conversation. So where can they find
Mm. So they can find me at my website is gillmoakes.com. So GILLMOAKES.com. And I'm at Gill Moakes more or less everywhere. So Instagram and LinkedIn tend to be where I show up, and the Rewild Your Business podcast. So if you're someone who wants to build a business doing the work that matters to you, I always say that, in fact, I'm quite proud of this new tagline that I came up with recently, and I really like it. So I'm going to give it a road test now
you?
on this, which is, it matters to me that you get to do the work that matters to you.
Yay.
Isn't that nice? I'm so smug.
Brava.
I'm so
I,
smug about that tagline, Roz.
I love that. I am here for it, my dear,
Right.
100%. Absolutely. Well, you know, I don't think I need to tell you all again, but I will connect with this woman. She is just one of the world's most beautiful souls and spirits. And I've been grateful, you know, to be able to call her my friend, my colleague, my sister. And I hope that this conversation has opened up the realm of possibility for you. I don't want you to be afraid. Life is life and death is part of life. And, you know, build your tribe, build your community, find your Jill, you know, find those people that you can share your truth and your experience with, so that you can continue to grow and evolve into the best and highest version of yourself. Because what we started out with is, the world needs your voice now more than ever. We are going to change this world one conversation at a time, one good deed at a time, one piece of content at a time. So your voice matters. I am grateful that you are here. If you haven't already, make sure that you like, subscribe, leave us a comment. We'll definitely respond, and hit the notification bell so that we can stay connected when I drop more content. But for now, I remind you, as always, to continue to think big and dream even bigger. I'll see you soon. Be well. Peace.